In this week's podcast, I'm speaking with the UAE Rugby fullback Conor Kennedy. Born in Zimbabwe, raised in the UAE since he was 3 years of age, fulfilling a lifelong dream, playing for the national team in both sevens and 15s format. A Gulf Men's League Cup winner in the 2021 Dubai Sevens for the Exiles. A UAE Premiership winner in 2023 with the Exiles, and now an Arab Rugby Sevens winner. We're going to be talking about what it takes to get to that level required to play for the UAE national squad and what led Conor on his successful journey to what could potentially be legendary status this summer. Stick around to find out more. Yalla Habibi! Conor Kennedy, welcome to the Yalla Sports podcast. How are you, mate? You all right?
Thanks, I appreciate it, Alex, for reaching out.
Good, good. You've had a busy few weeks. You've just returned from Egypt, haven't you?
Yeah, we had a tournament on the weekend, which was great. Few days away from the office, but in the real office. It was really, really cool to see some countries that I didn't even imagine had teams that were there, companies such as Libya and even Saudi were there, and then to see the quality of rugby, the standard that people were bringing was actually very, very impressive as well. Egypt were very, very good. They were in our pool as well, definitely gave us a run for the money. And then also playing against Morocco in the final. I think they had quite a few boys who were playing in the Pro D2 league in France. So they're full-time professionals as well. So yeah, I mean it was a really, really cool standard of rugby. Super happy to have been involved. Unfortunately missed out on last year's one. I think they lost in the final to Morocco actually, which was super unfortunate. So obviously this year we really came in all guns blazing and managed to take the win from them in the final as well.
Is that down to you then?
No, 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 definitely not. Coaching
Well, it
efforts,
must
team
be.
effort.
Because it was the men's and women's team came home with some
That's right.
silverware, didn't you?
Yeah, for sure. And same for the women's as well. Also did a very good job winning the plate. I think they would have liked to have achieved obviously a little bit more in the final
Hmm.
in terms of the cup, but they had a really, really good effort, missing a few key players and things like that. So it was good to see the women's league sort of playing at a really good standard of rugby that side too.
Yeah. How does the Arab Rugby Sevens work? I thought they were marketing it as literally only Arab, players could play in that tournament. Have they changed the rules recently where it's, all expats? Because that's the build-up of this region, isn't it? I mean, it's very difficult to
Oh
just
yeah.
get purely.
Look, I think we had a lot of Emirati boys that were there. Muhammad Ali started on the wing for us, super talented player. We were missing the likes of Muhammad Hatim as well, who were, are quite a force to be reckoned with in the Emirati sort of rugby world here in Dubai. So we put a strong team together, Captain Yusuf as well, leading the boys and still sort of building that interest. So bringing all of the boys along who are involved in the Shaheen Rugby Club, you know, it was even if they weren't playing, it was a sort of mode of interest to show them what it's like, to show the quality of rugby, to continue that growth and development of the sort of Emirati talent pool here in the UAE. And so obviously at the moment it's sort of thrown together by a lot of us expats to try and sort of lead the way and hopefully bring them up to a point where we have a full Emirati squad in the future. I don't think it's that far off either.
Yeah, wicked. Um, so that was the Arab Sevens.
Hmm.
You've played sevens and 15s, haven't you, at international level?
Yes, that's right.
Which do you prefer?
That's a great question. It's tough to say. I've been very fortunate enough to play sort of high level sevens and 15s across New Zealand, Zimbabwe, the UAE, and then a few tours elsewhere. But sevens, I would say for me is a personal preference just because of the freedom, the space. It's a lot sort of do or die situation. It's super exciting. One tackle can pretty much lead to the result of a game, so it's quite volatile. But yeah, to compete at that level has been good fun. But now the reason why it's a tough question is because obviously we've got a very very cool card of games with the 15s team this year. I think they've announced that we're playing against Zimbabwe away again this year, which will be super exciting to travel sort of as a warm-up game in into the West Asia Championship, which will be obviously against Hong Kong, Korea, and I believe Malaysia as well. So yeah, we've got a really cool sort of ticket to the World Cup, and now that they've changed it to more teams being included. So obviously, when else can a player say 2 games, and we can potentially even go to
Yeah.
2027 Australia. So yeah,
Well,
I mean,
we'll
it's
touch
that's
we'll
exciting.
touch more on that conversation in a bit because I really want to talk about that opportunity because it's a big opportunity, isn't it?
Mm.
But you play your club rugby with the Exiles. How long have you been with the Exiles for now?
Oof. My family moved here in 2001. I was 5 years old, and I think I've started playing rugby the year after that. So I've been with Exiles since under sixes and played
Wow.
right through age group under 18s, went across to university in New Zealand, and then when I came back, sort of joined the men's team as well. So I've been very fortunate to sort of represent Exiles pretty much at every age group. Yeah.
Right, okay. So your day job, you're in recruitment. How does the training and the preparation differ between the club, with the Exiles and the national level?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, both teams are still at amateur level. Obviously the UAE team is made up of quite a strong talent pool at the moment with all of the clubs in Dubai. I would say the structure of it is pretty similar. 2, 3 trainings a week. Obviously the UAE is more so in preparation for match time in a selected, section of the year. However, Exiles at the moment we train twice a week and obviously game on a Friday or a Saturday, depending on the sort of preference of the two teams. So yeah, I would say it's pretty similar, and obviously with the likes of Mike coming in as our strength conditioning coach, he's also given us some homework to do in our spare time with some S&C programs. We have access to a couple of gyms now, which is excellent for us to sort of do our own personal gym work in training, and then also on the weekends that we aren't training as well.
Yeah, I mean that was leading into my next question really about your daily routine. What does that look like as an amateur who still has a full-time job? How does your daily routine work?
Yeah, it's a good question, Alex, because obviously the days are sort of very similar. It all merges together. So in recruitment, obviously in the corporate world, it's very sort of eight and sort of six sort of working hours. So I've just moved across to Al Qudra Town Square now, which is good fun. And trying to prepare some time to do a gym session in the morning is probably what the routine would begin with. So wake up early, go for a run or a gym session, shower quickly and head to work in the office by 8, full day at work. Finish up probably around 6 o'clock, head back home, grab the boots, and then straight out to the rugby sevens, and then training for that evening. So, I mean, in the lead up to the Arab Sevens, we were training sevens on Monday, exiles on Tuesday, sevens on Wednesday, exiles on Thursday, and then match Friday. So it's been pretty full on the last few weeks. Keen for a rest day at some stage.
Yeah, it's like a professional routine. Just you're not getting paid for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet, one day. You're a
Inshallah.
fullback slash winger. I'm really interested in hearing more about this because that was my position. I was a fullback and winger back in
Oh,
the day.
excellent.
Very different. game back then, I might add. Uh, what skill sets do you need to develop in those positions?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean for myself, I always try and sort of have a good relationship with the coach and try and understand the game plan that he wants to play. Especially obviously at this level, you're now coming up to match preparation on doing studies on the team that you're playing and where their weaknesses are. So I mean for my sort of skill set, I really try and focus on, you know, what I'm good at first, and then what's going to complement the game plan, what's going to complement the team. I would say a good skill set for all fullbacks as a general term is probably speed off the mark, having the ability to catch high balls. Even for me as a bit more of a shorter player, skills like catching above your head, being able to kick off both feet, clearance kicks, up and unders, having a versatile sort of kicking skill set is quite important. And then something that sort of develops throughout the game is obviously just vision, being able to sort of tactically place the ball in a position where it's going to make the other team vulnerable to some sort of attack or defense. Obviously, these sorts of things are definitely going to complement your skill set for sure as a fullback.
Is it a position that you just fell into, or did you idolize a player back in the day that you wanted to head in that direction?
It's a good question. So when I was growing up, I played flanker, actually. And
I was a hooker.
hey, yeah, hooker and then flanker, and obviously it got to a stage where started noticing I was a little bit faster than some of the boys, and they wanted to put me in the backs, and so I was actually in Apollo's Skills Academy, and that was a really sort of defining moment in my rugby career in terms of the type of player that I wanted to become. And AP sort of really helped me find my place in that once I started to, kick more, understand the game a little bit better. So I actually transitioned into fly half 10 for my school career, leading up to the end of school, under 16s, under 18s. And then once I started playing men's rugby, I think I just enjoyed the freedom a little bit more. I feel like my sort of game style is a little bit more expressive. And as a 10, especially in Dubai, at least, a lot of the rugby is quite systematic, quite structured. It's very difficult to be a flary 10, in that sort of system, because it doesn't complement the team. So yeah, so fullback became a preference at an early age, and I looked up to, the likes of Percy Montgomery and a few of these guys back in the day, watching their highlights and sort of seeing them running through, holes and the speed that they played at, the kicks. And so yeah, I wanted to sort of match my game style towards that.
Yeah, awesome. And you touched on, improving skill sets before. Do the Exiles use tech? We were just talking about AI before.
Hmm.
Do Exiles use a lot of technology in training? Do you guys all sit around and study matches? Are you on that level yet?
Definitely not on the level, but now obviously I think we had a recent partnership in the Premiership division that they've obviously started recording our games and a little bit more consistently. So, and obviously that goes for other teams as well. And our coach Jacques, probably one of the best coaches I've ever had, is incredibly good at being able to watch, a game and identify weaknesses, strengths of opposition teams that we're going to come up against. So I would say it's more of an individual sort of approach at the moment. We don't have segregated time to be able to sit down as a team and go through it. But we do encourage each other to sort of give the videos a watch and sort of understand where you're going to be the most influential at sort of exploiting those weaknesses, for sure. So me as a fullback, when I'm rewatching games of other teams, I'm sort of trying to understand where they like to kick, what types of kicks that they like to bring across, which areas of the field I need to be most present in, what their chase lines look like, where the area is exposed, what feet do they kick off of. These are definitely things that, we're developing into as an individual, but as a team, I wouldn't say that we've sort of reached that level just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming though, isn't it? I mean, technology's just flying. So,
Yeah, yeah.
you mentioned Jacques there, your coach. When it comes to selection time, what helps a player stand out amongst the rest in order to be selected, in your position or the positions on the field?
I mean, at this point, just availability, really. Who- Yeah, who's free this weekend?
Right.
Um, no, I would say, Jacques is a very good coach in the sense that he knows how he wants to attack a particular game. Without sort of revealing too much, if we play Bahrain versus if we play Dragons, our game plans, might be slightly different, which would in essence mean that the players that he selects for particular positions would be quite different. But I think, as I said earlier, I think fullbacks have quite a generic skill set. I think most of you would need to be fast, just catch the ball and be able to kick clear, be an addition to a fly half, so to speak, as well. To have both kickers on the field is a huge asset. So yeah, at this point in time as a fullback in our game plan, I think it's just, be safe, don't lose the ball and don't drop it.
Yeah. All key skills to have as a fullback, aren't they?
Yeah.
Now you nearly went down the route of playing for Zimbabwe at one point, didn't you?
Yeah, I was there actually. Yeah, I was there for a year, I think, or 2 years nearly.
So tell us about that and what made you go in that direction?
So I was there on holiday, and I knew a couple of the boys down in Zimbabwe there, and they were playing touch. I was exposed to the sevens team that were training on the other field. And one of the guys sort of came over and asked if I could sort of run against them. And they were going into their sort of World Cup preparation camp the week after for the 15s team. And so just through a sort of word of mouth with the coaches, the Zim rugby community is quite small in that sense, especially for the national team. Um, they basically called me up and asked if I could join as a trial. And I said, sure, I'd love to do that. And so from there, sort of got involved in the 4 month camp that they had in the lead up to sort of their preparation for that year's Africa Cup. And so yeah, the unfortunate part was obviously I had played for UAE in 2019, and so this was now I think in 2021-ish, um, leading into 2022. So I was in serving a stand down period for I think it's 3 years, World Rugby mentioned, before I could then represent Zimbabwe. Um, Obviously I had my birth certificate there and was in the process of sort of, you know, going through that stand down period. But thankfully they kept me on as an investment to hopefully play for them, in the World Cup qualifiers, which would have been in the following year against Namibia, Kenya, and I think one other team, Burkina Faso. And yeah, unfortunately, my sort of duration for that stand down period exceeded that time. So it went across to, I think I finished in September, and they had played the World Cup qualifiers in the July, and they lost and in the semis to Namibia, unfortunately. And from there was a bit of a sort of segregation. I think the sort of journey and the plan that they had to win the World Cup qualifiers unfortunately didn't pan out the way they wanted. And so I think a lot of players sort of went back to their clubs and, they sort of had to begin rebuilding. So at that point, I got the call up again from Apollo to
Yeah.
come and play for the Sevens. And so I had a chat with both coaches and just said, I've got to sort of make a bit of an executive decision here. And at that point as well, I began my work here at Cooper Fitch, which was obviously a sort of career move. But yeah, so I based myself in Dubai. I was already sort of able to continue playing for UAE, and I thought that with the exposure and everything that we've had so far, it seems to be the right decision for now. Yeah.
Yeah, good decision made as well. Because, well, last, we had great internationals last year, didn't we? And during last year's autumn internationals, we played Zimbabwe and Germany.
Yeah.
Half the squad was made up of players from the Exiles.
Yeah, I
What do
guess
you
so.
think it is? What is it about the club that sees so many talented individuals playing for the national side there?
You mean from an exile's perspective?
Yeah, are most of the players through the grassroots system?
Mm.
Do you think that's why we tend to see a lot of
The
the
exiles players
national
playing
players?
for
Yeah, yeah,
international. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a good question. I think Exiles is the oldest club in Dubai. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's always sort of been a bit of a force to be reckoned with in terms of the rugby world in Dubai. We've sort of set the tone. I was speaking on behalf of the club or the other clubs that have been brought up here. Now you got, a few newer clubs sort of on the rise, which is really, really good. But I think Exiles has always sort of been perhaps the benchmark of rugby in Dubai, and perhaps maybe the reason why people tend to see that name pop up first. So if you're a new player entering Dubai who wants to get involved in rugby, typically Exiles would be the sort of name that's thrown around the most. And so yeah, I mean that in essence, would create a lot more exposure for the club to have a wider talent pool and inevitably, better players, I guess, to be selected for the likes of the national team and things like that once they become eligible.
Hmm. You were saying that you've been part of the club, well, pretty much all your life. So what
Yep.
support do the Exiles and the national setup? What support do they offer you to further develop your rugby skills and your rugby career?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because I think obviously, the national team is still very much an amateur setup. It's purely driven by our own sort of self, enthusiasm and interest in representing the country, and just, the love of the game, really. So, in terms of a skills perspective, again, it's doing those little things individually, like rewatching games, rewatching our game against Hong Kong last year, Korea, learning from it, understanding the players we play against, understanding your own performance. And these are all sorts of things that, we'll get into a room as with the national team and discuss. Us as backs. I can only really speak for the backs, but I'll sort of get in touch with some of the kickers in the team and the wingers and try and understand how we can better play together, understanding that chemistry, and then work on those skills together off the pitch and on the pitch. And yeah, from an Exiles perspective, obviously it's a family club. I mean, it's very much still very amateur, but for the UAE team, it's growing in that direction. And then from a physical standpoint, obviously, I think I mentioned earlier with Mike coming in, we've had access to some very good gyms and he's a professional, S&C coach, very knowledgeable at what he does, and he's created 6-week programs for us as individuals. I think we have testing next week as well, which will be great, great fun on the fitness test. And so it's becoming more detailed. But again, it's all run by his own self-drive to want to do that for us as a national team to take us to that next step, which is exactly what we need to do. And so we're all sort of trusting each other, relying on that buy-in as individuals that, we're not going to be able to compete with the likes of Hong Kong and stuff unless we sort of ingrain this into our daily schedules and stuff like that. But it seems like all the boys have got a lot of buy-in, especially with the journey that we're coming into for this year. It's going to be super important to have that trust in one another that we're doing it, you know?
Yeah. And with that, representing the national side, how does that how does that work around your career and the job? What difficulties do you come up with when, you've got a
Yeah.
career, but yet you've been asked to go fly to Hong Kong? How does that dynamic work?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think so obviously my boss is actually Michael Stubbs. I don't know if you know Michael Stubbs. He plays at Exiles with us, so he's very familiar with the rugby scene and also UAE rugby. So he gets it. He understands the sort of double responsibility, but work always comes first at the end of the day for us. I mean, we're not contracted at the end of the day. As I said, we're sort of there for the love of the game and everything. But in terms of the difficulties, yeah, it's tough to come off of a 9, 10 hour day in the office and obviously chuck your boots on and go and, smash around a few of those big boys on the pitch, when you're fatigued and everything. And then in amongst that, trying to manage the nutritional aspect, make sure you're eating right, doing meal prep. I suppose it's just trying to find the time to do these things and then get the right amount of rest and recovery that you need to play back-to-back weeks of rugby and then for club and then also apply that into the UAE season as soon as it begins. And then you add sevens to that as well. So it's a full year cycle, you know?
So, Connor, looking ahead to this summer, the
Mhm.
UAE were taking part in the Asia Rugby Championships again, which you touched on earlier. We had a tremendous 2024 campaign, finishing in second place behind Hong Kong. That tournament gave the UAE a massive boost in belief. This year, you guys could be on the cusp of legendary status if you if you win the tournament. If you win the tournament, you'll directly qualify for the 2027 Rugby World Cup to be held in Australia. Do you dare to dream?
Always, my competitive side would say always, for sure.
Yeah. How's the feeling in the camp? Where's the belief
Yeah,
of all the guys?
it's funny. So last year we had a camp in Elaine with all the UAE boys who were involved, everyone who's eligible for selection, even a few international boys who were flown over as well to help sort of build the sort of talent pool up. And it was interesting because, we arrived there thinking this is going to be a training camp, gym and in the morning and then followed closely by field session, lunch, and then evening session. Pretty much a full professional weekend. Very quickly did we realize that the presentation that they had on the board for us was actually about this and the sort of psychological mental preparation to say, boys, this is a real opportunity. So I think it was sort of at that moment that everyone, had that light bulb sort of blow and realize like, oh my God, like this can actually happen. And that's, that exactly is probably what the weekend was about was just experiencing what the preparation would be like, but at the same time drilling it into us that, this is a realistic opportunity for us to be able to make the World Cup and it's 2 games and and we're going. And never
Mm.
mind all the sort of other added benefits that would support us along the way, of course. But yeah, so I mean, very, very excited. Everyone is sort of not in disbelief, but it's, the nerves have calmed down and now it's just about getting the job done, really.
Yeah, and it must have been a huge boost in confidence for you boys to know that you beat Korea. Um, that in Malaysia, the games last year were massive, and we could see it in everyone's faces down on pitch side, what that meant to everyone. And it's probably just a big step and a big boost for you boys running into this, isn't it?
Oh, hugely, yeah, hugely. I mean, they're a professional setup. I mean, you can see it on the field, you can see it off the field. Their career, a class team, um, filled
Big
with
boys as well.
proper, right, yeah, proper professionals. And I think that's something that maybe has been a bit of a chip on our shoulder because we've always had a very, very strong talent pool in the UAE. With players who have been around, we've got a great mix of experience and youth with a lot of exciting talent. Um, and so it's just been a matter of putting it all together on the day. Of course, it's always tough when you're competing with guys who have been on programs and in camp for months and things like that. But our main focus last year was, put all of that aside, take the chip off your shoulder, and let's just play rugby. And it showed on the field our sort of mental discipline and in just wanting to get the job done is probably the reason for our success more so than anything else. We didn't gym any different. We didn't train any different. It was purely a mindset. And I think that that's taken us to the next level. And now it's sort of about putting the physical and the mental together, coming through this year.
You've grown up here. You've played all your rugby at a young age through with the Exiles. So you've seen a lot of change. How do you feel rugby's developing now in the region compared to, say, when you first started?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started playing for Exiles, we were at the Nadal Sheba club, playing on sand and Abu Dhabi as well. So I mean, in that sense, yeah, of course, it's developed. But if you talk about the sort of modern rugby played in Dubai right now, and Abu Dhabi, it's grown to a point where I think, I was having this chat with a few of the boys when I grew up, obviously leaving school, the ideology is always around if you want to be a professional rugby player, you can't be in Dubai. You have to go back to your home country or overseas and join a club there. And what I noticed, I think, in the last couple of years, especially with the sevens regime, is that kids are leaving school, super talented kids who probably have, a wide potential for playing international rugby for their home countries um, who are deciding to stay um, in between that period between school and university, maybe even a gap year purely to represent the UAE. And so it's the wins against Korea and the professionalism that we display off the field in our clubs as well, which is starting to get the youth into interested in representing the UAE. It's now, you know, a prestigious thing. We're very privileged to be able to do it. Whereas before, as I said, I think back in the day it was about who is available. And now, there's a real fight for positions, a real competition around the UAE, especially with the likes of Bahrain and Qatar being involved in the West Asia. It's giving us exposure to different rugby, different players, um, and collectively sort of growing and developing our game in the Premiership, which is then relating into the UAE. And it's good to have, the likes of Apollo watching around the club scene, Jacques, Aaron, as well as a forwards coach. All of them watch each of the Premiership games, watching the players, watching the current players, new players. And all of that contributes to the development of UAE rugby in general. And then to sort of go off the back of, the Arab Sevens last week, now you have ladies rugby that's really, really coming up in the same method. Girls at school who are now exposed because the sort of, school rugby for the girls is really elevating. And that's translating into UAE rugby now, especially at age group, and then filtering into the ladies squad. And then the Emiratis as well. Now you've got clubs, Al Maha, I believe, who played in the sevens for the first time. All these clubs is it's an excellent sort of growth mechanism just to be able to sort of compete at a sort of more world-class stage. And so I believe right now, hopefully don't get in trouble for this, but as a UAE men's player at the moment, it feels like we're sort of grabbing everyone as a team and taking us to that next step forward to compete internationally. And we sort of hope that that means that we'll get a lot more backing from everyone back home, from the federation, from other countries who also want to see us succeed. And yeah, so that's really sort of taken off in the last few years, I can see.
Yeah, and leading into my next question about that, with I guess with the federation and the rugby here in general, what do you personally, what would you like to see happen to further enhance the game out here?
Um, I think just availability of resources would be a big help. Obviously, I said one of the most difficult things about working full time and playing rugby as an amateur is more the availability of resources. You know, booking a physio appointment. It would be nice to have a physio there that sort of supports us, that knows the
Mhm.
players. And unfortunately, you got the likes of Mike, who's a professional S&C coach, who's now our physio, which it's great he can do the job, but at the end of the day, it's not what he's known for, and he'd like to sort of make a difference elsewhere where he can. So yeah, I would say it would be great to, as we progress into a bit more of a sort of professional setup off the field. Like these are the kinds of things I think it would be good to have just to support us individually as players, getting us prepared both mentally and physically for games. Availability of resources for sure is probably my top priority.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Enough about the national side of things. We've got
Mm,
a big day for you tonight. It's a massive game. The local derby between Exiles and the Hurricanes.
for sure.
Both clubs play their rugby out at the same venue. How does that setup work? Do you clash at training? Do you send little spies to each other to see what's going on, or is there any changing room antics that go on? What's it like?
I mean, on a personal level, I'm good mates with a lot of the Hurricanes boys. But yes, for sure, at a young age, the Hurricanes Exiles match has always been a derby. We're thankfully separated by the clubhouse. So I don't know if they're sending spies or not. I don't think we are. I think we're just rocking up on the day, and the rugby sort of pool is a small enough world here that we all know who's playing, and we've all sort of been around the bush playing against each other multiple times now. So yeah, it'll be a big game. I think it sort of determines a home or an away semi-final. So whoever wins is going to be pretty happy, I guess.
And do you train on the same nights?
I think so, yeah. Tuesdays, Thursdays is a typical club night. Yeah.
Hey, there's definitely spying going on. How can you not?
Yeah, no, I mean we don't record our games or anything, but yeah, no, I'm sure that, there's a few people who are lingering if in case, maybe the training times are different. We just finished early. We just thought we'd go the long way around and check out pitch
Yeah,
set.
yeah. Mark Y will be up on the roof with his binoculars out, recording all the moves.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, one final word from you, Connor. You're talking to your 12-year-old self. How does that play out? What's the one bit of advice you'd give him if he wanted to represent the UAE one day?
Wow. I would say trust your gut. Um, express yourself on the field. Um, enjoy your rugby. because that's important at that age in order to find, the player that you're going to become, once you're fully developed, and keep working on all the small things because they really matter. Passing off your left, right, kicking off your left, right, catching. Yeah, I would say that's probably my best advice.
Conor Kennedy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Alex. Appreciate it a lot.